Kenneth Rogoff, the former head of the IMF, now at Harvard University, believes that 90% debt to GDP is the threshold level over which you start to have significant concerns over the ability to finance your debt and to run sustainable fiscal policy. He also believes that's the level that if an emerging economy was running that debt, it would be downgraded, whereas we're now in the situation where most of the developed economies are running debt levels of that extent. So what we need to see is a very painful consolidation in the European economies. And if we just have a look at the principal economies that are at risk at this stage, which tend to be the southern European economies, they've put in extremely ambitious debt reduction targets. If we look at Greece, if Greece left its current policy unchanged, you would see public debt to GDP rise from 120% to nearly 180% in the space of 3 years. Remembering it took Japan nearly 2 decades to get to 200% of GDP, we're seeing a rapid erosion in the European economies. For Spain, we're looking at debt moving from 70% of GDP, assuming no policy change, to around 100% of GDP by 2013, assuming no policy change. So all these economies have had to put in very dramatic austerity packages. And the conditions of the European bailout package, which have been agreed, is that they have to meet these deficit reduction targets each year, or they'll no longer be able to access the funding mechanism which was put in place. Now, we did see unprecedented action from Europe at the midpoint of this crisis. The European Financial Stabilisation Mechanism basically is providing 60 billion euro from Article 122.2, which is essentially the money that had been set up to help emerging European economies that were facing financing crises. And it's going to draw on 440 billion euro of bilateral loans. The IMF will match that contribution. So basically what you will see is that there's a total envelope of spending of around 1.5 trillion US dollars. So it's a substantial pool of money. It should be able to ring-fence the problem. It's enough to cover the immediate financing needs of Greece, Portugal, and Italy, perhaps Ireland. But if you saw contagion spread to France and Germany, it wouldn't be sufficient. Now, there's one problem with this mechanism, and that is that the money actually hasn't been given to the Stability Fund. What will happen is the economies such as Greece, Spain, Portugal and Italy will still have to access the market for their financing. If the markets are not prepared to fund them or want to fund them at a punitive level, so their bond spreads are extremely wide, then what you will have is the other European economies will issue debt that will be purchased by the European system of national banks and underwritten by the ECB. So you have this rather bizarre circular mechanism where to enable one economy to service its debt levels, you'll have the other economies issue debt to finance that. And it was the public debt to GDP levels that got the European economy into this entire mess to start with. So you essentially have a circular mechanism where the debt problem is distributed across Europe as a result of the way it works. And this is potentially where we can see contagion into other markets. Now, the reason Europe responded so aggressively and so proactively to the crisis that we were seeing was not out of any particular desire to save Greece, the desire of the public to bail out the peripheral economies is not that high. You do, however, have an extraordinarily strong political commitment to ensure that Greece is bowed out and that the other economies which are likely to face risk are also bowed out. And the reason for that is it's more to do with the European banking system than it is to do with any individual economy. Now, if the Greek debt crisis led to a contagion effect of other weak sovereigns, and we saw a significant rise in bond yields, which is equivalent to a significant fall in their price, the majority of European bonds are owned by the European banking system. If they moved into a situation where there was uncertainty on the bonds that were held by banks, you'd move into a repeat of what we saw immediately after 2008 and the first part of 2009, where there was counterparty uncertainty and banks would not be prepared to lend to each other, and you'd see your interbank financing markets, which are essentially the lubricant for the entire financial system and the economy, freeze up again. So it would have been Lehman's on a European level. It would have also been the UK as well, given their exposure. So the keen desire by Sarkozy and Merkel to put together this European rescue package was driven as much by the European banking system as it was by the desire to maintain the European political union. And I think we have to respect that that desire is very, very strong.